Welcome to another indie showcase highlighting the many dev-submitted games and demos we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future one, please get in touch. But for our first game tonight, we are starting with the game Sunblaze. This is a side-scrolling kind of action platformer slash puzzle type game. Think along the lines of Celeste. And not just because of the fact that we control a girl who has the power of dashing. We play as Sunblaze here, a superhero in training who is trapped in the ever-popular, danger room gone awry scenario, where it's our mission to get out of each area by collecting the necessary MacGuffin, and of course to show off by collecting even more than that. So, the general gameplay, or in terms of your movement tech, is you can run, jump, you can also hang onto edges as well as do an air dash. Now, the challenge of Sunblaze is that you are limited in the number of moves you can actually do in the air, and you'll have to land or grab an edge in order to reset some of your movement tech. Now, some levels will have bonus cubes. If you collect all of them in a chapter, you unlock the hard mode, and trust me, this game gets very challenging. What I like about Sunblaze is that despite again having those similar elements of Celeste, it is certainly its own thing. The tech required to play this is slightly different, and the game makes great use of having different environmental obstacles and rules that are introduced as you move through its chapters. There are boss fights for you to go after, but for the most part, this is a obstacle-focused platformer through and through. And I would definitely put this on the more challenging side. I don't know if I would rate it as high as Celeste. The thing about this game is that while Celeste does have larger rooms that can be filled with multiple obstacles, Sunblaze focuses on single room challenges. So they're very more compact, and that also means you're not losing as much time if you mess up compared to a Celeste run, especially some of the later challenges in it. So, all in all, this is one of those games that it knows what it wants to be. If you are a fan of platforming-based games, I would definitely recommend this one. But if you found stuff like Celeste, like Super Meat Boy to be too challenging for your skills, then this one definitely asks a lot of you. But for me, I definitely enjoyed it. We now turn to the game Magnus Failure. This is a short-form, very mysterious adventure-style game. We exist in this strange world as a mysterious stranger, who, hearing radio signals, one day decides to get out of his house and explore. And what he finds, of course, are mysteries wrapped in enigmas, wrapped in adventure-style puzzles. So, the game itself is basically set up as a series of puzzles. You'll explore the environment looking for various items and keys, which you can then use to solve puzzles, which will then move you on to the next thing. And the game has certainly an interesting look and tone to it, with very weird UI elements and unusual puzzles as well. But unfortunately, the unusual nature of it does get in the way. It is one of those titles where you're going to have to spend time just figuring out how the UI even works before you can even begin to solve some of the game's puzzles. Another issue of Magnus Failure is that this is not a full game. This is considered episode 1 of what is supposed to be, or supposedly planned to be, a larger series, and the first episode can probably take you casually, maybe about an hour or so, if you know what you're doing, easily far less. It's an interesting concept for a game, but it does feel like it is a step behind in terms of more modern, more approachable adventure games. But if you do like your puzzle solving with a side order of strange and mysteriousness, then this may be worth it just to check it out. For our next game, we have Cyjin, and this was played as a demo, but the full game is out now. And this is described as, well, a platformer where you don't actually jump. Instead, all you do is dash forward, or you dash specifically in the direction that your mouse cursor is aimed in. If you pass over enemies, you can kill them, And you'll of course interact with switches and try to avoid obstacles any which way you can. And the game definitely has a very interesting appeal in the fact that it's promoting the precision-based focus of a platformer, but you don't have the same kind of skill set that we normally see from platforming-based games. You can only jump at the angles of your character. So in a way, it removes some of the guesswork that a lot of platformers have in terms of jumping velocity, but in the same breath, it replaces it with having to set up your dashes beforehand. Because if you're at the wrong angle when something moves or you're trying to avoid it, you're not going to be able to safely dodge it. And this was incredibly true when I got to the game's or to the demo's boss fight, which I found to be on the challenging side because of it. As far as the gameplay goes, it is one of those titles where what you see is what you get. And while the actual movement and motion is not that hard to figure out in Cyjin, it can certainly be a little challenging when we get to some of the more advanced stuff where I assume there's more obstacle dodging in the full game. For me, I wasn't a huge fan of this kind of platforming just because I'm more of a jumping kind of guy. But I will say that if you are looking for an obstacle-focused platformer that is different in terms of its appeal and gameplay, then give this one a try. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this showcase. And as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my offering of books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. For our next game, we have Blade Assault. This is a 2D high-speed action roguelike, and should look very familiar if you saw our play of Neon Abyss back in 2021. We of course play as a one-man army who is trying to deal with the evil ruler of a floating city. And to do that, we are going to go zone by zone, area by area, slicing up as many bad guys as we can. So, for this one, it definitely combines various aspects of some of the other action roguelikes we've played and seen here. You have a danger level or an assault level on the upper right that the longer you play, the more dangerous things become. You'll be able to equip different weapons, specials, and passives that you'll find or buy throughout your run itself. And the game does feature persistence of unlocking new items and even characters who you can play with on subsequent runs. In terms of the general gameplay itself, it is on the floaty side. You're going to be doing a lot of moving and trying to get those very quick slashes in when you can. And the game does feature some interesting aspects with having different elements that you can equip which will affect the properties of your attacks and can affect enemies in different ways, such as freezing them, as you can see right here. Part of the problem that Blade Assault has is that it definitely gets very busy when you start flinging and jumping, and all of a sudden there's just tons and tons of numbers on screen all vying for your attention. And it did feel a bit on the repetitive side. Of course, when you die, you return to the first area, and there didn't seem to be a lot of variance, at least in terms of the enemies and encounters you run into. I believe the bosses are always the same at the end of each biome, and my main issue that I had with this was I just didn't feel the urge to keep playing it in the same way as games like Curse of the Dead Gods or Curse of the Mad Guys. I get those two confused. Dead Cells, Neon Abyss, and so on. If you are looking for another action roguelike, one that's definitely on the speedier side, I would say at least give this one a check and see if you enjoy it. But again, keep in mind that I don't think this game really does anything too outside of the box for this particular kind of gameplay loop. We now turn to something very different. This is Skinwalker Hunt. Please keep in mind that the footage you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of the game. We checked this one out in 2021 during this kind of peak of horror developers going for the hunt the strange monster all alone in the wilderness, I guess, kind of genre. And this is from the developer who did the game Witch Hunt, which was in a very similar vein, but also a little bit, I think, clunkier in terms of its execution. With this, it's definitely been more streamlined, but still challenging. We are set loose in an area trying to hunt down a Skinwalker who is terrorizing the land. And to do that, we are going to track them through the wilderness, set up traps, and hopefully not get killed by it or its minions that are in the field. So in terms of the general gameplay, this is definitely more of a slow burner in terms of its horror. You're going to be spending a lot of time wandering around trying to find clues and resources, then followed by brief moments of, oh my god, what the heck is that? Why is it coming after me? And I like this concept of kind of like a, almost like a boss-focused horror game. And even if you do find the Skinwalker, it will take multiple shots in order to take them down. Now, with that said, it is or in the version that I played of it, it can be a little janky in terms of trying to get shots, and of course tracking this guy throughout the land here. Some of the enemies were either very, very easy to kill, others ones just refuse to go down with a bullet. And I know the game has been updated a lot since we play this. I don't know what has been added in terms of mechanics or systems to it. So, with that said, I did like the concept of this one. Again, I think it is going to be kind of a niche audience who will enjoy it. But if you do like those kinds of hunting style games with a whole lot of horror, then I would say at least give this one a check and see if you'll enjoy it. For our last game of this showcase, this is Summertime Madness. This is a adventure puzzle focus game, where our concept is that we are an artist during, I believe it's World War II, when in order to escape the fighting and destruction, we made a deal with a mysterious stranger to go inside the world of our painting, and now we only have until midnight to get out or we'll be stuck here. So I do really like the aesthetic. It has that kind of hand-drawn or hand-painted look to it. But the gameplay itself is strictly linear. You're going to move from puzzle to puzzle, trying to figure out what are the rules and complete them in order to keep moving forward. I don't know if there are multiple endings or different routes you can take in it. There is some degree of exploration in terms of some of the larger areas, but for the most part, again, this is a game that is strictly about what is the actual things I need to interact with, and then go about doing that. I did find some of the puzzles to be on the annoying side. It is one of those games where it's going to ask you to walk around a lot in order to go from puzzle piece to puzzle piece, and of course do a lot of backtracking as well in terms of where things are trying to go. So while the puzzle solving didn't work for me, the game is at least on the, I think, shorter side just due to the limitations of the mechanics. And if you are looking for, I think, a good weekend kind of adventure game, then give this one a check. But if you're hoping for either more interesting puzzles or at least a larger aspect or world to explore, this game may be too short for you. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up the showcase here. As always, I would like to thank the developers who submitted games. You'll find links to all of them in the description down below. As always, if you have an upcoming game and you'd like me to take a look at it for a future stream and video, please get in touch. Do all the liking, subscribing, and commenting, and check out our Discord and Patreon. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. And until next time, take care.